Hello, what we're going to be covering in this video is another program that uses a function in Python. So in physics, an object is in motion, is said to have kinetic energy. How you calculate the kinetic energy is equal to 1/2 the mass of the object times the velocity of the object squared. And the velocity is in meters per second and the mass is in kilograms. And both of these variables must be float data points, so you should be able to input either an integer or a float. So we're going to write a function named kinetic energy that accepts the object's mass and velocity as arguments, and then the function should return the amount of kinetic energy that the object has. And then we're going to write a program that prompts the user to enter values for mass and velocity, and then calls the kinetic energy function to get the object's kinetic energy. So let's go ahead and start writing up our program. So I will go ahead and open up a new file in idle, and I will just go ahead and expand that. So the first thing we're going to go ahead and do is I'm just going to add in a comment just to let the user know what this program is doing. This program calculates the kinetic energy of an object. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and define our function. So we need to include the def keyword, then the name of the function, and then per the instructions, we're going to be passing in two arguments, the mass and the velocity. So those are the two arguments that get passed in, and then we need to add the colon to let Python know that the rest of the code will get executed when the function gets called. So again, we have that tab automatically by Python, and what we need to do is we need to write the code for the function. And all we're going to be doing is we're just going to be returning the calculation for kinetic energy. So all we have to do is add in our return statement, and then it'll just be our mass times our velocity, which is our velocity squared, divided by 2. So all we're doing here is when the function gets called, the mass and velocity get passed in. Then the kinetic energy gets calculated, and that value gets returned to the line of code that calls the function. So that is the end of our function. As you can see, when we add that return statement, Python actually knows that that's the end of the function, so it tabs back to the first tab position. So now what we need to do is we need to get our inputs from the user. So the first input is going to be our mass, and we want to basically convert it into a float. So I'll just do that on the same line as my input. If you don't remember, when you actually all input that the user inputs is a string, so if you need to use the input in a mathematical formula, you need to convert that to the applicable integer or float data type. Okay, of the object in kilograms. Okay, so that'll grab our mass. Then we will get our velocity. And again, we're going to convert it to a float, have the user input the information, enter object velocity, in meters per second. Okay, so now the next thing we need to do is, since we now have the mass and velocity, we need to go ahead and call our function. And the kinetic energy will get returned, so whatever value gets returned, we're going to save it in a variable named KE. And that will just equal our call to our kinetic, make sure I spell that right, kinetic energy function. And what we're going to be passing in is our mass and our velocity. Okay, so what's going to happen on this line is we're going to call our function, passing in the mass and velocity that the user entered. Our function will go ahead and calculate the kinetic energy using this formula right here, and it'll return that value, and that will get saved to our KE variable. So the last thing we need to do is we need to print that information out. So we'll call our little print statement here, and it will be kinetic energy is, and what I'm going to do is I am going to go ahead and format the kinetic energy. And I am going to format it so there are 2 places to the right of the decimal place. So in order to do that, I need to type in 0.2 and then the data type that we're going to be formatting, which is a float. Then I can go ahead and close that off, and what we're getting passed back is joules, which is the kinetic energy, how it's measured in joules. So that's our program. So let me go ahead and run it. Of course, it's going to ask me to save the program first, so I'll click on OK. And I will just save it in this directory. I'll call it energy and click on save. Now it should run. So it prompts us to enter the mass of the object in kilograms, which is 12.333. It asks us to enter the velocity, which is 20.123. And then what we get returned, kinetic energy, is 2497.03 joules. So this is just an example of another program that uses a function where you pass arguments into the function and the function returns a value back to the calling program. So that's all I had for this video.